Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Matt Lockett. I am the state representative for the 39th District. And I want to first start off and apologize that if I do get up and leave, I've got to get on the road to Paducah to a funeral, I'm sorry, for my aunt. So I will be doing that shortly. When I was approached to carry a bill about Convention of States and an Article 5 convention, my reaction was an absolutely yes. Yes, I will. Because I believe that our country and our federal government is at a state where it's time that our states step in. I believe it's important as we look around the country and we see our parties, and it doesn't matter who has been in the White House, that are spending our children and our grandchildren and our grandchildren's children into oblivion. When our country carries almost a $30 trillion debt, it's time that our states step in and say that enough is enough. And I think all of us here would probably say and admit that our federal government is probably not going to do that on their own. And I believe that we've shown that when they have acted in such an irresponsible manner as to almost feel like they have a blank checkbook with our taxpayer dollars. So how do we stop that? I want to read this. This comes directly from the Convention of States website. It says, "The root of the frustration felt by citizens across America is that our federal government does whatever it wants, and there is nothing that citizens can do about it. It doesn't seem to matter who they send to represent them in Washington, D.C., but they have lost control of their own government. This is a systemic problem that requires a systemic solution. A convention of states to propose constitutional amendments is the solution. It is the people's final check on Washington, D.C., exercised through their state legislators. The ingenious plan of the founders to make the state legislators' ambitions counteract the federal officials' ambitions for the good of the people. The Convention of States Project's resolution seeks to do this by using the tool given to the states in Article 5 of the United States Constitution. It calls for an Article 5 convention to pose amendments that, quote, impose fiscal restraints on the federal government and to limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government and to limit the terms of office for its officials and for members of Congress. I want to introduce two people to you this afternoon that will go into much greater detail about what this Article 5 convention is, and I believe that will answer a lot of your questions that I've also encountered. First up will be Mary Jo Wedding, who is the Kentucky State Director for the Convention of States Action, and then after Ms. Wedding will be Mark Meckler, who is the President of the Convention of States Action. Ms. Wedding.
Thanks, Mark. Let me move this around in front of me because I'm not really technologically inclined here. So, Chairman and honorable members of the State Government Committee, I want to thank you all for allowing me to represent our volunteers throughout the state here today to talk to you about not only Article 5, but also the Convention of States Action Project. Now, my name again is Mary Jo Wedding. I am a lifelong Northern Kentucky resident. I've lived here my entire life, actually right across the river from Cincinnati in Senator Schroeder's district. And it's important here today that I'm coming to you as a concerned citizen about the condition of our constitutional republic. But most important, it's not really who I am or where I come from, it's the people that are sitting behind me. It's the 35,000 petition signers. Now I know you guys say, oh, I get these emails and I don't pay any attention because they're canned emails. Well, they may be canned emails to you guys, but let me tell you what happens when a citizen signs a petition. The first thing is we take it manually if they don't do it online. Secondly, we have a team of volunteers that actually physically calls that petition signer. They call them, they thank them for signing the petition, and then they ask them, do you have any questions? Do you understand what Article 5 is? Do you understand what we're trying to do? If they don't answer the phone and we have to leave them a voicemail, we leave them that message. We also send them a text message and we send them another email. Because those petition signers and those emails that always are discarded, I know, I understand, you get tons of emails, I get it. They're real people. They're real people and real voters. This room today is filled with Convention of States, and I didn't pay these people to come. I did give them a t-shirt to wear, all right? So I appreciate them coming out, but these people are the voters. These are the individuals that need to know that you are supporting their choices and making sure that when you take that oath to defend the Constitution, you're actually defending their liberties. Again, I said there's 35,000 petition signers, but that's not all of the volunteers. Those are just the ones that will sign the petition. There's some conservatives that won't sign a petition. They won't put their name on the dotted line, but they're here and they support Article 5. It is within your constitutional duty to call an Article 5. It's in the Constitution. You took the oath. It is part of your state legislator's responsibility to not only call a convention, but to assign and make sure they give the focus to those legislators they're going to send to that convention to represent the state and the constitutional questions and issues that the people behind me are here. So I'm not going to get into the details or the he said or she said. I'm going to let Mark do that. But the one thing
let's go ahead, Mark.
Sorry, but wait a minute, Kevin. Hold on a second. Real quick. This is the Constitution that you guys all have on your desk, right? This is the Constitution that we live under today. These are Supreme Court rulings. We need to get back to this, because if we continue this, we have no republic. Thank you. Now you can go.
Well, what's the title of that book, real quick?
This is the Constitution annotated.
Annotated. Okay.
Yes. Okay. And it comes from, Brett would have to tell you. Well, Mark, you can tell me where it comes from.
The floor is yours, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. By the way, the title, unbelievably, because I got one of those by mistake originally, it just says on the spine, the Constitution of the United States of America, Centennial Edition. And that's actually really important because I hear people say all the time, well, Mark, why do we need to amend the Constitution? I mean, after all, this document is beautiful, succinct. It says what we know it says. We all understand what it says. Why do we need to amend it? And the answer is because this is not the Constitution under which we live. The federal government deems that to be the United States Constitution. Call the government publishing office today. You could order one. When I did it, it was about $130. It's a little bit ironic. Today they say they don't have the money to publish those anymore, so you can't order those from the federal government anymore. Yeah, that wasn't in the $1 trillion bill that they just passed. I want to back up a little bit, and again, thank you for letting me be here. It's an honor to be with you guys. In my opinion, having traveled all over the country, been in 48 states, been in the legislatures in most of those, this is where America actually works. When you look at Washington, D.C. and what goes on, when we watch television, whatever media outlet you happen to watch, what we see is the brokenness and the dysfunction of the United States of America. I have the honor and privilege of traveling around and testifying in state legislatures all over the country, and thank God for you, for men and women like you that are willing to serve and do what the founders intended us to do. And one of the things that they intended us to do, and you to do specifically, was to stand in the breach when the federal government got out of control. Regardless of which party we're a member of, the statistics are astounding. 72% of all Americans feel that the federal government is too big and does too much. It's just involved in too much of our business. We might have partisan differences about what they should or should not be involved in, but the vast majority of the American people are disgusted, dissatisfied, disenchanted with the federal government. And as the representative said, we believe we can't do anything about it. But we were given this power in Article 5. It was given to us literally 2 days before the end of convention in 1787. Colonel George Mason stood and he addressed the men assembled. This is September 15th, 2 days before the end of convention, and he said, we have a terrible problem. We've given the power to Congress to propose amendments should they deem them necessary, but not to the people acting through the states. And then he asked, are we so naive that we believe that the federal government, that's a tyranny, will ever propose amendments to restrain its own tyranny? I'm guessing they laughed. We don't have video, but we do have Madison's notes. They say, NINCOM. Not one person even commented. There was no debate. It was unanimously put in the Constitution to give you this power. The power to step into the breach, to step into the line of fire, and to stop a runaway federal government. Why you? Well, of everybody they could have given this power to, only you have the power to call a convention, to propose amendments, and then to ratify those amendments, thereby changing the structure of our actual Constitution. Why you, of all people? And the answer, actually, if you think about it, is obvious, because the founders were you. Most of them sat in legislatures in the states. They sat on city councils. They understood and believed in government close to the people. So when they said, we have to have a protector for our country, ultimately they looked to you, because that's what they understood. That's where they understood that the preservation of liberty would come from you. So they gave you this power, and now the question is, do we exercise that power? 245 years later, we've never done so. Why haven't we done so? It's hard. The founders intended it to be really hard. They wanted a really high bar. It takes 2/3 of states just to call a convention. Both houses of the legislature are agreeing. You know how hard it is just to get a legislature to agree inside itself. Now you need 2/3 of all state legislatures to agree on the subject matter for a convention. We've never done it. In convention, what happens? You'll choose your own delegates. You'll send your delegates to that convention, and you'll empower them to do certain things. You'll tell them there are certain things they can't do, and they'll get there, and they will convene like a legislature, and they will debate, and they will argue. And they will have to come to a majority to do one thing and one thing only. And this is important. I hear about the runaway convention all the time. The convention is so powerful. It can do so much damage. It can destroy our Constitution. The convention itself has the power to suggest. Nothing else. I've never gone to a meeting and thought, you know, people, like, this is an interim hearing, there'll be suggestions made. It's terrifying. People will make suggestions. There's nothing that can happen in a convention except for suggestions. And then whatever those suggestions are, if we can get a majority of states to agree, those will go out to the states for ratification. And then it takes an even bigger majority. It takes 38 states to ratify anything that comes out of convention. This particular resolution says that the convention will discuss anything that would impose term limits on federal officials. That would mean Congress, which over 85% of Americans want, but it would also mean what we now refer to as the deep state, staffers and bureaucrats, the fourth branch of government that was never supposed to exist. It also potentially means federal judiciary. The convention would discuss anything that would also impose fiscal restraints on the federal government. You heard 30 trillion in debt, but actually really the real number off book is closer to $150 trillion, numbers we cannot even imagine. We could impose generally accepted accounting principles on the federal government. I once sat in a meeting with the OMB and I asked them what accounting principles they had. And they literally, these are senior officials at the OMB, they said, we don't have any principles. I said, I know that, but I was talking about accounting principles. And so they literally don't follow any accounting principles. So we can impose those things. We can impose taxation caps, spending caps. And then finally, and I think most importantly, we can impose caps or restrictions on scope, jurisdiction, and power of the federal government. There are many things the federal government was never intended to be involved in. In fact, the founders agreed, Hamilton and Jefferson in their great debate about big government versus small government, they agreed that anything that you can do, that you as the state legislature have the power to do, the federal government didn't have the power to do. and vice versa. And now, today, you regulate your education system, your environment, your healthcare system, and the federal government does all of those things as well, and that's because the courts have given them that power, not the Constitution. So today we come to you to talk about the idea that you could step into the breach, that you have the power. There's one last thing I'd like to address, then I'd be happy to take questions, that I hear all the time this argument. This is literally the only argument I hear against the idea of the state stepping in and calling a convention of states. Mark, it's going to be a runaway convention. You have no idea what's going to happen. We're going to throw it open. The whole Constitution is at risk. And I'm going to tell you straight up, unequivocally, that is false. How do I know it's false? I'm not the smartest guy in the world. Every single nationally known conservative commentator that's commented on this, 100% of them, Levin, Hannity, Shapiro, all of these guys, Glenn Beck, all of these guys say not possible. All the conservative legal scholars in the country that are nationally known, Randy Barnett at Georgetown, at Princeton, Robbie George, all of them say it cannot run away. It's limited by what we limit them to. And in the end, and this is the most important thing, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I am a lawyer. Don't hold that against me. We're not very good at math, but I can do this math. It takes 38 states to ratify anything that comes out of convention. And I want to challenge anybody who is concerned about this, and you can call me directly. I'm happy to give you my phone number and my card. Tell me what amendment you're afraid of, and then tell me the 38 states that will ratify it. I've made that offer to millions of people. I've never gotten an email or a phone call. It cannot run away. That's a fallacy created to stop us from using the Constitution to save the Constitution. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meckler. We have Teresa Camarano. I'm going to, come on up, Teresa. I'm going to butcher your name. Representative Tipton, did you have a question for Mary Jo or Mark? Okay. Okay. Go ahead, introduce yourself and
Okay.
speak.
My name is Teresa Camoriano. I'm a patent attorney, and I'm the president of the Louisville Tea Party. So thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. I'd like to start by telling you a short, true story. Please bear with me. I promise it'll be short and relevant. It takes a lot going wrong to create a disaster in a large systemic, in a large system. An example of that is in 1987, there was a deadly fire in the London Underground, the London subway system. Imagine the horror. You go down into the subway system, you're planning to go across town in the evening, and all of a sudden, a huge fire shoots up the escalator, fills up the whole room you're in, and kills you and 31 other people and injures 100. How can something like that happen? It takes a lot of mistakes for a big disaster like that to happen. The original cause, the initial cause, was a lit match on a wooden escalator. People shouldn't have been lighting matches. It's illegal. It was illegal to smoke or light matches in the London Underground. But many people did it. It was frequently, the law was frequently flouted. They found black marks around where other matches had fallen and had burnt themselves out without creating a disaster. Another part of the problem that created this disaster was a false sense of security. The supervisors of the London Underground were severely reprimanded. They felt that nobody had ever died in a fire in the underground before, so they didn't need to worry about it happening. Another problem that caused this disaster was delay, lack of preparation, lack of training. People reported it, passengers reported it when it was still a small fire. And the people working for the underground went down to check on it. They went back upstairs to call the fire department. When the fire department came, they had the wrong equipment. It couldn't reach the fire. The fire burned out of control. It went up the wooden escalator. And at the top of the wooden escalator, on the ceiling, were 20 layers of old paint. One of the people running the underground had warned them that that 20 layers of old paint could be a fire hazard, but that wasn't his domain and he was ignored. The next thing that happened was totally unexpected. This huge jet of flames shot up the escalator and filled the whole room and burned everything. That jet of flames was totally unexpected, and it even took them a long time to figure out why that had happened. It turned out that the 30-degree angle of the escalator created an unexpected type of airflow, which they finally gave a name, the trench effect. So that unexpected trench effect is what caused that to shoot up and burn all these people. Why am I telling you this story? Because I think our country is in a very similar situation today to the London Underground. We have people in all branches of government today dropping lit matches, ignoring the law, ignoring what we know to be the law. We have people divided in our country. We have some people in our country who are literally trying to burn our institutions to the ground. They have some idea that if they destroy what we have, something perfect will rise from the ashes. We also have a false sense of security, which I just heard earlier. It can't possibly, this country can't possibly collapse. It's never collapsed before, so it can't possibly collapse. We can't have a runaway convention. We know for sure that could never happen. I believe that's a false sense of security. So what could go wrong? Hold my beer. Call an Article 5 convention. Let's see what we can make go wrong. We just need a quick fix. We'll rein in the federal government and everything will be fine. The problem is the Constitution already does rein in the federal government, and the problem is that people are ignoring the Constitution today. No amendment will fix that problem. So the upside of a constitutional convention, or this is called an Article 5 convention, the upside is zero. It won't make people respect the Constitution. But the downside is huge. The potential loss of our rights, the potential unbalancing of that carefully balanced set of checks and balances is something that we don't want to see happen. An Article 5 convention is a total unknown. No matter what anybody tells you, we don't know, nobody knows what will happen if an Article 5 convention is called. It's an unknown like the trench effect. We have no widely respected statesman like George Washington or Benjamin Franklin to bring order to this convention. It could be anything the people you send to it do. They are free to do as they please. They will make their own rules. They will set their own agenda. One of the people on Facebook from the Kentucky Convention of States supporters said that what we want to do is make this like a snowball rolling down the mountain and it becomes unstoppable. In my view, that is exactly what we do not want when it comes to amending the foundational document of our entire country. What we need is careful, a deliberate process with widespread agreement before any change is ever made to our Constitution. What do we risk? We risk a loss of our rights, First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights. They could pack the courts. They could eliminate the Electoral College. I mean, no end of problems could come out of a convention like this. So we have the matches lit, we have the wooden escalator, we have 20 layers of paint. This is no time to set loose the trench effect, the Article 5 convention. Now, the people who support the Article 5 convention say, don't worry, it still takes 3/4 of the states to ratify anything that comes out of a convention. Now, we have all just been through a year and a half where we have seen powerful media, powerful big business create fear, mass hysteria, and people ready to give up their rights. Do you think that won't happen after an Article 5 convention. People can be brainwashed and stampeded in a rush. And I thought it was interesting that this second way of amending the Constitution was suggested. I didn't know that, only 2 days before the vote was taken on the Constitution. Again, some last-minute quick things can be big mistakes. I would say let's not risk all of that. Let's take a better path. I am very sympathetic to those who want an Article 5 convention. They see the problems in this country that I see and we want to correct, the runaway spending being a big one. It's very human to seek a quick fix, but there is no quick fix to this. It's taken us many years to get into the mess we're in, and it's going to take us time to get out of it. I think we need to go back to what Coach says when the game is slipping away. We need to get back to the fundamentals. And I'm calling this the 3 R's. Remember, respect, and rebuild. We need to remember our history, our principles, remember what it took to build this great country, and remember that we're all in this together, and we need to pull together to make this country work. Number 2 is respect. Respect the life, liberty, and property of every individual in this country. Respect the Constitution and respect the rule of law. The 3rd R, rebuild. We need to rebuild on the existing structure and build back the constitutional republic that we are supposed to have. And the states and the local governments and local people are going to be very instrumental in doing that. You have an important role to play. You don't need an Article 5 convention. You don't need a constitutional amendment to say no to the federal government when it starts spending illegal, unconstitutional money on unconstitutional programs. You just need to say no. I realize that's not an easy thing to do, but it's your responsibility to adhere to the Constitution. So when they start wanting to send you money for a project that's unconstitutional, we have to say no. Voting for an Article 5 convention is not a harmless, feel-good gesture. It is playing with fire. It is much easier to stop this problem now, before it gets loose, than to wait until we have a runaway convention and we have that snowball rolling down the mountain, and all of a sudden there's momentum and you're pressured to ratify that. I'm giving you a warning now. There were warnings given before the London fire. They were ignored. I hope you will not ignore this warning. I ask you to please not vote for an Article 5 convention. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, just to set the stage for this meeting, I have so much respect for the COS and Mary Jo, and I try to answer each email. Sometimes it gets overwhelming. I do, and it's when you guys talk, I identify so much with what you're saying, and I have great respect for the Tea Party, especially the Louisville Tea Party. You know, I got a lot of them in my district, and they're just as adamant against it. Personally, I'm kind of torn. You know, it's just back and forth, and so I thought it would be great to get you guys together. And Teresa, you always are so articulate and with the Tea Party, and I just thought it'd be a good idea for the committee, because everybody in this committee, I'm sure, gets the emails from COS, as I do, and you know, it's good that we understand before we move forward. We have about 5 minutes of questions. Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like Chairman Bratcher mentioned, I've kept up with this issue the last few years. Now, it's my understanding that, for lack of a better term, there's more than one Article 5 convention group out there. There are other projects, other proposals, other proposed resolutions. I believe one may be specific to term limits, one may be balanced budget amendment. Could you just comment on that a little bit? Am I missing some that are out there? And the second part of my question is, in your particular resolution, how many states have adopted your resolution at this point in time, and how many more would you need for it to go to an Article 5 convention?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Tipton, you are correct. There are three primary groups now pursuing Article 5 conventions. One is U.S. term limits. I believe they just have a couple of states. They're the newest group. You have the balanced budget amendment folks. They've been working for about, I want to say 40 years roughly now to get to the requisite 34 states. Last couple of years, they've lost a few states. Some states have flipped from red to blue and they've rescinded. So I would guess there's somewhere around 25, 26 states. I don't know the exact number. That one will actually be litigated in federal court, unfortunately, either way, because the language is different on a bunch of those. And then there's the Convention of States action, which is what I represent. Currently, 15 states have passed our resolution in both houses. Another 8 states have passed it in one house or another. 49 states have filed the resolution. That's the current state of affairs. And we are the only group that has a national grassroots movement. As it was discussed, 35,000 folks here, over 5 million nationally. About 1,000 people a week currently join the movement.
Any other questions? Representative Nemus.
Thank you. I've got a quick question of each side. I want to see, sir, why you're so confident that you can control it, because I'm going straight to the language.
Yeah.
It says they can, shall call a convention for proposing amendments. The states can do that. It doesn't say particular amendments. It says proposing amendments. When the Constitution was written, the folks under the Articles of Confederation thought they were sending people to write amendments to the Articles and not to the new Constitution. And then you say, what about if something untoward is sent to the states, will 3/4 of the states approve it? It doesn't say 3/4 of the states have to approve it. It says 3/4 of the states approve it, or state conventions, which are decided by Congress. I don't trust Congress. Congress could say, we're not going to give this to the state legislature. We're going to create our own conventions in each state. So why are you so confident in that? And I'm going to go ahead and ask my question to Risa, and you guys answer them. Risa, how bad does it got to get before we take a shot? So those are my questions.
Okay.
All right.
Teresa.
You know, I share this. I share the frustration, and I'm sympathetic to it, very sympathetic to it. But we have a system that works. Our country is divided in half. Do you expect?
Hey, come on now. Come on now. We'll have to empty the room if we're going to play that game.
Do you expect to get an amendment to the Constitution agreed upon when the whole country is split in half? I mean, it's not going to happen. What we need to do is rebuild our country, rebuild so that people understand that fiscal responsibility has to be the law of the land, and we have to be fiscally responsible. We have to do it. It's hard work. But it's what we've got, and it's the best Constitution the world has seen. So I don't want a chance ripping it up. It's the best we've got. And by the way, we elect those people that go to Congress. They're Kentuckians that we send. And if we don't like them, then we get rid of them and put somebody else in there. But we have that power as the people. It's not like the state is the people and the people we send to the federal government are not the people. They're our elected representatives just like you are. And if we don't like them, we boot them out and we put somebody else in. But it's up to us to do that. And I wish all these people behind me would help me do that and get good people.
Okay.
You know, but I mean, it is not time for the Hail Mary pass, okay? It is not time for the Hail Mary pass. It is time to get back to the fundamentals.
Or,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oh, thank you, Representative. Are we on there? Am I live?
yes.
Just real quick, I have to defend these folks. They all vote. They all participate in elections. They're all doing exactly what you ask of them. The time has come for the American people to stand. I want to go back in history real quickly. You brought up the 1787 convention. It actually was not a runaway convention. I've read the commissions of all the commissioners. You can find those linked on our website, by the way. And what you'll find is this is the language in their commissions: full authority to take any and all actions necessary to render the federal Constitution adequate for the exigencies of the Union. There's a misperception from history because Congress later on, after 7 states already said that they should gather to amend the Articles of Confederation. Congress actually did something where they didn't have any authority to do it. Can you imagine that? They actually had no authority under the Articles of Confederation to call a convention, to propose amendments, or anything like that. So the states had already fully authorized their delegates to do whatever was necessary. That's all true for all but 2 states, by the way. I don't want to dig into that detail. How do I know it won't run away? Well, Patrick Henry said in his famous "Give me liberty or give me death" speech that I have no lamplight by which my feet can be guided other than the lamplight of history. Here's what we know historically. 11 conventions in America before 1787. 1787 convention, which I've just definitively demonstrated was not a runaway convention. By the way, all the states ratified what they did. Approximately 31 more conventions since then, interstate conventions, granted not Article 5, but where the states gathered, commissioned their delegates, and actually held conventions, and we have no examples, 0 in all of American history of a runaway convention. You will convene and you will name your own delegates. They will answer to you, as is true with all the states. And you think about who you're going to commission, you're going to commission people you trust. That's true with all the states. So there's never been a runaway convention in all of American history. And as far as the ratifying methodology, you are correct. There are 2 methods that are specified in the Constitution, one being legislative ratification, y'all ratifying, and the other being the appointment of state ratifying conventions. All of them except for one, except for the repeal of prohibition, have been done by legislative ratification. The only one that was punted, so to speak, to state ratifying conventions was the repeal of prohibitions due to the controversial nature. Who controls what a state ratifying convention is? The state legislature. So the bottom line is, one way or another, this comes back to the state legislatures to decide what a state ratifying convention is. Those are the only 2 things that Congress is authorized to state, either legislative ratification or ratification by state ratifying conventions. And we have a history of that. It went to the states, and the states decided themselves how the ratifying conventions would be run.
Okay, we have one more question, Senator Alvarado.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It really was very similar to Representative Nemes's question. Ultimately, at the end there, from Ms. Camariano, it's effectively, I would assume all of us think our Constitution is well written, and this is an ability that's been given to the legislatures to do this. So, to that same point, I would wonder at what point should the legislatures actually enact this? Because if it's out of fear that something bad might awry, we would never use this. So why would our founders even put this in our Constitution if they were so fearful that somehow this would get away from us? That's my question, is I think we're more worried about what might happen, what might go wrong, than saying we've got something that's currently going wrong in federal government. We have an opportunity to fix it. They gave us the ability to do so. That's the question that I have. And I get the sense more from you that I'm scared of what might occur. We might have a fire, something bad might happen. That's
yes, I am very much afraid of what might occur, and I think we all should be. This has never been done before. There has never been an Article 5 convention to amend this Constitution. We can all agree on that. It has been talked about in the past, in history, and it was rejected because people were afraid of a runaway convention. And the materials from this group, I believe they're from this group, say, you know, but our people, you know, they're more scholarly than the people prior to us who were afraid. There's no reason to be afraid now. I think that there was good reason to be afraid throughout history. We have a perfectly good process for amending the Constitution if that's what we want to do, and it requires careful deliberation, and it requires widespread agreement, and that's what we ought to have if we're going to amend our Constitution.
Why would our founding fathers give us this ability then, in your opinion? Why would our founding fathers
Well,
give
I
us
just heard something that I didn't know before. It came up 2 days before the Constitution was voted on. You know, they might have been tired. They might have been just pooped and said, hey, you know, let's get this thing over with. They want this.
Actually, Madison's notes reflect that they discussed this throughout the entire convention. In fact, I've personally seen George Mason's copy of the Constitution that was handed to him the day the Constitutional Convention began. It's in there. it fell out during convention. It was a mistake, and that's what he said. A mistake was made through the process, but we have the notes of it being discussed through committees. The idea that the founders did something by accident because they were lazy at the end of convention, honestly, that's just a slander on the founders.
I certainly don't want to slander the
Okay.
founders, but I
Okay.
do know that there is good reason to be concerned. And the fact that you have this ability doesn't mean you should use it. You need to be prudent. You need to be cautious. If we're conservatives, and many of us call ourselves conservatives, we need to be very cautious before we mess around with amending the Constitution of the United States.
Okay, we got a whole nother subject here. I'm going to give Representative Duplessis, you're going to make a 30-second
I'll make it fast.
statement.
I was going to ask a question, but I'm just going to make a statement. We all are, I think most of us agree that federal spending is way out of control. In fact, well, I'll get your first name, Teresa, you represented a group that is against overspending and taxation.
Absolutely.
We should never legislate out of fear. We should legislate out of fact. If George Washington had done what he did based on fear, we'd still be British. We do what we do because it's the right thing to do. I don't know if COS is right or not, but I'm not going to be dictated because I'm afraid. I will do what's right.
All right. All right. Good debate. Good debate. Good debate. Okay. Thank you guys for participating and all you guys for showing up and showing your colors. That's great. Okay.